Thank you. 7:43. It's time for this week's segment of Happier at Home. And this morning, we're talking about the challenges of heart disease in elderly women. We're joined by none other than Deb Marcello with more for us this morning. Deb, thanks so much for waking up and coming in.
You're welcome.
We appreciate it. So we're talking about heart disease in elderly women. Just a couple of seconds ago, you and I were talking about some of the symptoms. They're not what you would think for a potential heart attack or anything like that.
Right, and the problem is that women present differently with cardiovascular disease and heart attacks than men. And amazingly, it's very little known, especially to women, that there are more women that die of heart attack than any other disease when they're over the age of 60. So it's very prevalent. More die from cardiovascular disease than any other disease combined at that age. Wow. So you need to understand what your risk factors are, what signs and symptoms are, because they are very different. They could present very, very differently than men. So not ignoring those signs and symptoms and pursuing an answer, keeping up on blood work and things like that will help to at least understand what your health is, what your risk factors are, especially the controllable ones, and then to make sure that you're advocating for yourself. Those
risk factors, those are typical risk factors for heart disease, blood pressure, things of that nature, correct?
So it would be high blood pressure, genetic predisposition of one of your parents or one of your hereditary family line had heart disease at a young age. Diabetes. Diabetes causes a lot of cardiovascular disease throughout, your heart, your capillaries. It can cause so many different problems. Smoking, another thing that causes so many problems. If you are a woman and you have more than one drink of alcohol a day. Premature menopause, if you went into menopause at an age of 40 or less. Those are things that put you at risk. Obesity, inactivity, all of those things contribute to heart disease, and especially in women.
Some of these things are preventable. The smoking, for instance, drinking too much alcohol, things we can actively adjust. But going into menopause early, for some people, excess weight. These are not just quick fix things that we can snap our fingers and change.
Right. And black women have a much even higher than 60% more than white women. So when you have these factors that are not controllable, at least you can be aware of your risk and look out for the signs and symptoms and make sure that you're pursuing those, not just saying, okay, well, I had these symptoms and we'll work it out. Some of the signs and symptoms, as we were talking about before we went on air, are very vague. I was a former emergency room nurse, so having a woman come in who was diaphoretic, that means sweaty. If you're just sweaty, short of breath, that could be a sign and symptom of having a heart attack for a woman. Upper abdominal pain, as opposed to the left-sided chest pain, jaw pain, left arm pain, you still could have those symptoms, but it can be more vague. It can just be tiredness. So as a woman, knowing and recognizing those changes in your health, if you all of a sudden have swelling in your ankles or your lower legs, that's a problem. There's a problem with your heart pumping efficiently.
And correct me if I'm wrong, these symptoms will present differently based on those risk factors.
Well, it may not just be one risk factor is associated with one symptom.
Sure.
So it just presents differently for women, and for each person it's different. So knowing those, and amazingly, physicians even can underdiagnose cardiovascular disease in women, and once it's diagnosed, even heart attacks, once it's diagnosed, they're treated less aggressively than men. So making sure that when you have these signs and symptoms, these risk factors, make sure that you're keeping up on your physical exams. Just regular physical exams.
We're gonna run out of time here, Deb. I'm sorry. Give us a website.
Yes, happieratHome.com.
Phenomenal information. Thank you for
Thank
sharing
you.
this. We're going to post all of this on our website, foxrochester.com, after the show.